In this video, we've got daily storm chances with heat really starting to build, but a big cool down is on the way for some. Plus, a low pressure system will sink down into the Gulf of Mexico that we'll be watching as we'll take you through the July 4th weekend. Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Happy Saturday out there. Hope everyone is having a fabulous weekend. Let's get right to it as we walk you through the next 7 days. Let's take a look at the overall jet stream this morning on the North American view so you can really kind of tell what's happening. You can definitely see we've got a dominating ridge of high pressure over much of the southern plains here. But that ridge of high pressure is actually building into the Pacific Northwest, where they're experiencing those well above average temperatures for them, and that heat will intensify as we get deeper to the weekend into the first day or two of next week. Then on the south side of this, we've got this ridge. So on the south side, we got a lot of sinking air, but just to the north of there, that's where that boundary is, and that's where the storm chances are this morning and will be into the afternoon hours. So let's take a look at the overall setup for your satellite picture this morning. You can really kind of definitely delve in and see what's happening. There's that kind of just clear skies. I mean, a lot of just, it's just all sun out here. There's not much rain to speak of, but you can see where all the rain is with that monsoonal flow. It's almost like a conveyor belt of moisture in parts of Arizona, New Mexico, that goes into southern parts of Colorado, and that's also combining with a cold front. So on the south side of there's that ridge of high pressure is going to be dominating the Pacific Northwest. There's that instability ahead of it. So we've got some pretty strong thunderstorms this morning breaking out in parts of Iowa, especially getting into Illinois and to parts of Wisconsin. And on the south side of there, we have this little mesoscale convective complex with this coastal low that we've been talking about is impacting Florida this morning. That actually shifts into the Gulf of Mexico. And then as well as this front will eventually start to shift in to the Gulf of Mexico by midweek and actually develop a low pressure center into the Gulf of Mexico that we'll be watching. So we got a lot to delve into, but we got plenty of heat for today, but we also have plenty of storms to deal with where those storms are happening right now. And they did in fact increase yet another day for slight risk for severe storms. This has been a daily basis somewhere in the United States since April the 26th. We're going on almost 2 months now of a daily chance of at least a slight risk for severe storms somewhere in the US. So that just continues today into parts of Davenport and Peoria. Those could be on the strong side, some severe. We're not talking tornadoes. There's not a tornado threat with this particular system, but we could be producing some stronger wind gusts of up to 60 miles an hour and some larger hail on the quarter size variety. But there's, you can actually see where the cold front will be into the Texas Panhandle, in the northern parts of Oklahoma, as well as into Kansas, and that will continue to shift into portions of Missouri and continue to fishtail further off to the south. But today, it's all about the heat on the south side of that cold front, with numerous heat advisories in Texas and to Oklahoma, Missouri into Arkansas, Louisiana, along the coast here into portions of Mississippi and Alabama. But yeah, these are new out here with that developing ridge, and now we've got heat advisories. They've been experiencing all the cooler conditions for much of the summer so far. That changes in a big way this weekend as temperatures start to soar for them, and you'll get into the 90s, believe it or not, and a lot of the places along the coast. But for the rest of us, as we go into tomorrow on Sunday, there's the cold front. We'll continue to sink further and further south. I do feel on the south side of that, you'll have one more triple-digit day into a good chunk of Dallas and southward. But just to the north of there's that heavier rain with that continuing monsoonal flow that will be impacting parts of New Mexico into Colorado. But along this cold front, where the cold front will be, we could be looking at some stronger wind gusts right along this front into Missouri, getting into Kentucky, parts of Tennessee. Essentially Indiana and Ohio can't be ruled out with some stronger wind gust out ahead of this cold front. that will be sinking southward through the afternoon hour into the evening time frame. But here's an overall snapshot on where the rain will be for the next 48 hours. So under that ridge of high pressure, there's not much rain to speak of up here into the Pacific Northwest. Actually, not much rain in Texas either. I mean, it's got the monsoonal flow with, here's your chart on the right hand corner of the screen. A little bit higher amounts with increased, even some flash flood watches out here into parts of New Mexico and to southern Colorado. There's the cold front. Along that boundary, you could be looking at some heavier thunderstorms into northern portions of Oklahoma, southern portions of Kansas, especially in Missouri, and where all the instability is this morning into Iowa, into Illinois, and some heavier showers extending into parts of Indiana. And that will continue to traverse across and getting into parts of the Ohio Valley and eventually headed up into portions of the mid-Atlantic states. And there's our kind of coastal low that will be impacting Florida with the scattered thunderstorms. 1 to 2 inches is definitely not out of the question, especially kind of along the coast over the next couple of days. So let's take a look at the overall setup going forward. And look at the wind. So like I mentioned, right along that cold front, we could be looking at some higher wind gusts. So I show this map because a lot of people travel, a lot of truck drivers, a lot of people on the road this time of year, summertime travel, right? And so you want to hey, where I can expect some of the higher wind gusts out there when I'm on the road. Yeah, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Kentucky, right along that boundary. This morning it's in Iowa, it's in Illinois, and that continues to fishtail further down to the south where that coastal low is, right along the border here of the Gulf of Mexico, and getting into portions of Louisiana could have some higher wind gusts as well. But as we go into Monday, there's the cold front, right? There's not much rain to speak of on the backside of that into Dallas. Got dominating ridge of high pressure. So once this cold front moves through, it's actually pretty nice conditions. It's going to be beautiful weather for a good chunk of the country. The Pacific Northwest is going to be pretty hot, but it's going to be dry and sunny. So, but the only game in town is going to be along that front, and it's going to be in central Texas. Yes, I said Texas with rain. You're going to have some shower activity with this front. So central Texas, South Texas, and especially along into Louisiana, just on the southern side of this. But look at that. There's the low pressure system that we've been highlighting on this channel for a couple days, as it would sink down into the Gulf of Mexico and could try to form some tropical type feature. But like I mentioned, back behind it, there's your Monday temperatures. I'm not even seeing 100 on the map, which is a huge change of what you've seen for a good chunk of June so far. But there's the ridge of high pressure just dominating the West Coast. It's finally their turn to get some of that heat, and they'll be experiencing that well into the 90s, if not upwards to almost triple-digit temperatures in parts of Idaho here. But it is temporary. It don't last forever. I think we do cool down after we heat up quickly in a big way. But there's the front by Tuesday. As it continues to fishtail further and further south, it will slow. It will definitely slow. But that's actually a good thing. It's actually going to be dropping some daily rain chances for this area into central Texas and to South Texas, not much or North Texas, but along the coast there, with the combination of that coastal low and this stalled front along the coast. There's where the activity will be on your Tuesday. And I think the same thing kind of happens on Wednesday. This low pressure will eventually sink down into the Gulf of Mexico. And in fact, I had a lot of requests to kind of highlight, hey, what's happening in Alaska? So we'll take you to Alaska. So yeah, to end of June, the first couple of days of July, it's above average precipitation in Alaska, but basically above average temperatures for your eastern parts of Alaska. Once you get into your ports of western parts of Alaska, it starts to become more normal because that heat does not last off the West Coast. You have more normal to cooler conditions coming back in after you heat up in a big way. So that's not going to last too long. And so does the cool down for a good chunk of the central US as well. you're going to experience that cool down, but it's going to be very subtle. A lot of these places are going to actually take you back to even normal, what you would typically see this time of year. And then the above average temperatures come back to end June, and then the first couple of days of July for your July 4th weekend. But you can see on the precipitation front, pretty dry. But on the desert, the desert Southwest, there is the monsoonal flow with a continued above average precipitation continuing for them, and that would just fishtail across the midsection of the country. But this, what stands out right here, is Louisiana right along the coast here with above average precipitation. That's the hint of that low pressure system. In fact, the National Hurricane Center has highlighted now a 20% chance as that low drops into the Gulf of Mexico, as it takes advantage of some of those well above average sea surface temperatures right along the coast. It tries to develop what they call a homegrown type system. Whether it forms in a tropical feature or not, it looks to appear slow moving and going to be sending very heavy rain amounts either out in the open waters of the Gulf or just around the coastal regions along the coast. We'll be watching this feature and fine-tuning this in my daily tropical update videos as well. But now let's really expand the view. Now let's really expand the view and take you to the northern hemisphere. So to start July, right? So we're, today we're 6 months from Christmas. This year has flown by, right? And then, so now this is going to be starting July 1st here. And with that ridge of high pressure coming back for the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, there's the eastern side of Alaska, the cooler side, to start July in Alaska with those cooler conditions. We've got a developing trough in the midsection of Canada here that'll impact parts of the northern sections of the upper Great Plains. And then down to the south of there's the higher, ridge of high pressure going to be dominating, coming back in a big way with those above average conditions. And there's the below average temperatures right along the coast, complements of that low pressure system and that stalled front that will be impacting the area. And of course, the monsoonal flow just continues. But yeah, just to the south of there, right along that axis where those cooler conditions will be, you have the dominating ridge of high pressure to the south of there. That axis, by the time we get into Friday, we could be looking at those storm developments, setting up shop over parts of Nebraska, get into Iowa again, parts of Wisconsin. There's the coastal low right along the coast. Could be looking at some daily sporadic thunderstorms for them along the coast. And then there's going into Saturday. This would be next weekend, next Saturday, that trough to the north, ridge of high pressure underneath. Then that's where the instability right in the middle would be, where the showers and thunderstorms along that boundary there would sink a little bit further south into Kansas, into Missouri, into southern Illinois, getting into parts of Kentucky, going into West Virginia and parts of New Jersey, then heading up along portions of Long Island with daily sporadic storms with that low pressure center to the south. And then right along that boundary again for your July 4th holiday would see those sporadic thunderstorms into parts, again, the same areas, into Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, West Virginia, right along this boundary, as much of the southern flank stays dry, but not along the coast. We'll be watching whatever comes from that little low pressure system that's going to be hugging the coast into parts of Texas, into Louisiana. But this will kind of give you an idea of the preliminary rain amounts for the next 7 days. So we've got that dominating ridge of high pressure impacting much of California, much of the Pacific Northwest, not expecting much of anything. There's the continuing monsoonal flow continuing for the desert Southwest, but especially for New Mexico and Colorado. Those be adding to those totals. And then right along that boundary there, you'll have some heavier precipitation, and then a little bit higher precipitation as you get into Illinois, into Wisconsin. And there's the feature as you pull further south. There's not much rain to speak of in a good chunk of Oklahoma and much of North Texas. It's all going to be in central Texas, South Texas, but depends on the actual placement. And some of the heavier rain amounts can get closer into along the coast. We'll be watching this, so things could turn, increase these rain amounts big time, depending on the strength of this low pressure center off into the Gulf of Mexico. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. do like this video, definitely stay tuned for my afternoon update and give you a complete overview of the tropics. So stay tuned for that and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.